Wood Flooring. Des Kelly Interiors, where quality flooring costs less.
It will stay mild and humid tonight. Dry too at first, but showers will move up across the country with some heavy downpours possible. Lowest temperatures of 9 to 12 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now then, shock day at the Crucible this afternoon. Ken Doherty's going to join us around 7:30 to talk about Ronnie O'Sullivan's shock defeat to an amateur making his debut at the Crucible. We'll also ask Ken about hanging out with Jackie Chan last month, which is half the reason we're getting him on, to be frank. Matt Williams and Rory O'Connor on the weekend's rugby, and Vili Vunipola as well. Pat Nevin with us after 9 o'clock on the football show. Things have become very complicated for Ed Woodward, and the title race comes to Old Trafford tomorrow as well. The plot thickens. 53106 is the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. We have Richie with us as ever. Hello.
Hey, Joe.
And Kieran Cunningham, chief sports writer with the Irish Daily Star, with us as well. Thanks for being here.
Cheers.
It is tricky for the pundits over the weekend in that so many of them said you have to give Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the job, and now it's blown up in their faces. So everyone's blaming the players now.
Yeah, so many of those pundits being United ex-players as well.
But I even remember like Robbie Savage doing a thing for BT Sport. He was on a rowing machine.
Okay.
Don't ask why.
If you're taking the opinion of Robbie Savage, that's more on you, Joe, than anybody else.
I'm not taking the opinion of Robbie Savage, but he would be the very one who would jump up now and slam. Why did they give Ollie the job?
He is ex-United, though.
What?
He is ex-United.
He's
on the class 92.
One of the few that didn't make it.
Mentioned as part of the class.
You know what it really highlights, actually, the real difficulty with the world of punditry? It just highlights how difficult it is to predict the future, you know? And now this is one of the few occasions...
It's almost as if you can't, Joe.
No, but hang on. This is one of the few occasions where now the pundits can't rationalise after the event and say, well, it was obvious. I mean, why did he start him? It was obviously going to blow up that way. Or, you know, that's what he got wrong, with the benefit of having watched the 45 minutes unfold or the hour and a half unfold. Whereas they have all cashed in their chips on Ollie. They've made it abundantly clear you have to pick Ollie. It's Ollie, Ollie, Ollie. And now suddenly they have to be pundits, but they're just as guilty and fallible as Ed Woodward.
It's symptomatic of everything post-Ferguson. It's literally been, everything has been a reaction to the thing that went before it. So the reaction to the thing that went before Solskjaer getting the job was, he has to get the job. And now that he has gotten the job, it was clearly not good enough.
Yeah, even though he's only a couple months in. There was no logic in giving him the job when they gave it to him.
Did you not think
why
so?
could no? Well, why not wait? Like he'd obviously started brilliantly. Like I think they'd got 2 points more than Liverpool in that period, the first 14-15 games, and I think Liverpool were the closest to them in terms of points. But it was still only 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, and you had a champion. Like they beat PSG away with a depleted team. But a depleted team that cost a hell of a lot of money, and they got some massive breaks. Like Buffon made a mistake that we'd never seen Buffon make, and you got a VAR decision that people would still argue about over the handball. So they did get breaks that day. So ultimately, why not wait to see how they get on against Barcelona and see how the top four thing pans out? Because nobody was going to come in for Solskjaer, and he wasn't going to go back to 300 grand a year at Molde by choice. So he was going to hang on as long as he could. And like there is this, I've heard people say, oh no, you need some manager in place to try and get players in the summer as well. But like, to get players in the summer, you could do with Champions League football. So, you know, why are you committing to somebody you don't need to commit to until the summer? Just see how the season pans out. It's only a matter of waiting 6 or 7 weeks.
They'd already bought themselves that time by saying he's going to be there until the end of the season. They just didn't need to jump in and say, oh, by the way, he's here for the next 2 years.
But the other thing is the Pochettino factor. Like, why, if you're looking at the manager they could possibly get, like the best managers around, Klopp is tied up, Guardiola is tied up, Simeone doesn't speak English, he's no interest in going to England. Like virtually all the top managers are tied up. The one you could see, I know Tottenham fans hate people saying this, but the ones that you could imagine if he was given a massive budget and the biggest club in the world, that he would take it. And his record, like people say, oh, but he's lost. What's he lost? 11 games.
He hasn't won anything here. What's he won?
He hasn't won a League Cup, but he signed one player in 3 transfer windows. You know, he has a really good chance to go in the Champions League final. You know, it's all the turmoil over changing stadium twice. I just think, why did you not go all out to get this guy? And even now, the way they're talking about Mike Phelan being the technical director, it's a Liverpool problem. It's been obsessed with your history and the boot room idea, and that we buy into the ethos, and that destroyed Liverpool for years. It held them back for years, and there's still a lot of that bullshit in the marketing of Liverpool, as we were talking about outside, about how this means more, and pictures of Bill Shankly, and the way I think Klopp must go, can you just leave Bill Shankly? He left 45 years ago, No, I was hardly. Klopp was hardly only a tiny kid. None of his players were born.
Yeah.
Why do they keep going on about it?
Yeah.
But United have fallen into that trap now as well. I
It's
think.
obviously a real phenomenon. There's something in human nature because it's happened twice now, and the parallels are so concrete. Like you can really see them.
Do you know up to the late 19th century, nostalgia was considered to be a disease?
No.
Yeah. And
still
there were
probably should
various
be.
cures for it. Like leeches were used as a cure for nostalgia.
Bring that back.
Yeah.
And now, so what was the issue with nostalgia? What was how did it corrupt you? What was so bad about it?
I think it was seen as a kind of an emotional, mental weakness or something, nostalgia. So I still think leeches should be used as a cure for Dublin Kerry nostalgia. Because if it's a Dublin Kerry, I find I'm emigrating. I'm sorry.
If it's a Dublin Mayo one, you're going to get the same need for leeches, to be fair.
But at least
with Dublin Mayo,
at least there's a team there you'd want to win.
We're in the midst of a
I'll
modern.
leave you feel that one.
Like everybody wants Dublin and Kerry both to lose.
The Dublin Mayo thing's a modern, ongoing rivalry between.
But if we
two
get
current
if we get
teams.
another year of Dublin Mayo in the final, we're going to have the same
No, that's different.
rehash.
We're
Is it
not.
that?
Well, we're talking about. Remember the final 2-3 years ago. How's it going to go this time? As opposed to, geez, remember the lads 30-40 years ago.
Well, I get to remind my father-in-law of the time he knocked out Mickey Ned O'Sullivan at Croke Park, so that's always fun.
Your father-in-law knocked out Mickey Ned.
Alan Larkin.
Oh,
There you go.
that's a fella. He once offered me a job selling insurance. He's your father-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Years ago, I was doing a little bit for 98 FM, and I wasn't doing much. And a guy said, "Well, this guy here, he said, you're in the radio, so you might be good at selling stuff." And I'd be the worst person in the world at selling insurance. So I met him anyway. Nice fellow. But
Did you
he's your
recommend you use leeches in the selling and stuff? Or?
No, he had a great beard.
He did.
Larkin,
He had a fantastic beard.
Textbook beard.
We're on
And
the air.
headband.
We're on the air, by the way. Literally 4 minutes. No mention of Dublin Derby, lads. Disappointing is a text in.
Yeah.
Screw Spurs and Brighton, man.
Calm your jets.
I can't.
I saw somebody in a Bowes jersey in Grafton Street, so he's obviously
Was
going
it
to
Stephen
the game,
Doyle?
so.
We're on the air 4 minutes.
No.
We're on the air 4 minutes. We're just lining up what's on the way in the show. We segued from mentioning Pat Nevin was on the way, and that led us into Manchester.
bow is-
We'll get to it. Don't worry.
Something in my throat.
Ferguson needs to stop going to games for a start, says Gary Lynch in Dublin.
And talking to the squad, like he supposedly talked to the players a few times. You shouldn't be let near the players. Like that's one thing.
It's one of the reasons they won in PSG. Remember the photo?
Yeah, but if there's one thing,
He's been in charge since March.
Going on about the Liverpool comparison, there's one thing move Bob Paisley made, and it was a tough thing to do, but he banned Bill Shankly from the training ground.
Yeah, poor old Bill.
Because
turning
Bill
up.
was going in, and the players were still calling him boss.
Well, it's
And
the
you would have the same thing. Like Mike Phelan probably still calls
Well,
Ferguson
you
gaffer.
still have the same nonsense. Did you see that story a couple of months ago where Solskjaer refuses to park in the manager's spot because he still thinks it belongs to Ferguson? Like, as soon as you're thinking that way, you are goosed. Absolutely goosed as a manager of a
he's
club.
in trouble.
But United did the same thing with Busby and Franco Farrell and stuff back in the
very
70s.
difficult. You're dealing with once in a generation, once in a lifetime almost in Ferguson's case, set of
Yeah.
circumstances. It's incredibly difficult to navigate away from effectively one man ruling the club.
Navigate away.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
That's
it's
it, like you're
difficult.
not going to have a dynasty again. You can't be successful again. You could have a manager who have a great 5 years, another one have another good 3 or 4 years, but you're not going to have somebody there for how long was he there? 26 years.
Yeah,
Was it?
Richie's that you're saying navigate away.
Yeah.
The issue is
Cut him adrift.
there isn't the knowledge there. Who is doing the navigating? Ed Woodward? The
Well,
Glazers? They don't know how to. There's no one there actually at the club who knows how to guide them out of this.
Well, the last thing you want to do is lean on, an elderly manager who decided to quit the game 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, we don't know to what extent they are leaning on him. I mean, he's hanging around. He's on the bus. He's an ambassador.
That's enough. That's to be worried.
I don't think that's an issue, really.
A former manager hanging around to that degree, the most,
So what'd you say to him?
totemistic character in the club's history since Matt Busby
So you'd
is
say,
hanging around.
You'd say, Sir Alex, you're not allowed into the ground anymore.
I wouldn't say, you don't need to couch it in those terms.
What are you saying?
You just need to have a manager who's strong enough to not lean on him.
Well, we don't know to what extent he's been leaned on.
We don't.
Solskjaer said enough times he's consulted him and he's spoken to him about team matters. He's been on the training ground. Like, he's there and thereabouts.
I think if Alex Ferguson had just watched a game and you wanted to bend something off someone, he's not the worst person to go, by the way, what do you make of him as a player? What do you think?
But you should have without wanting to use a Gilesism here, you should have enough moral courage and moral conviction to decide to go your own way, especially if you're in charge of a club like
You
Manchester
don't
United.
have to
But,
take the advice to
but,
seek the advice in the first place.
it might be
You can take the advice on board and say, well, I'm going to disagree with that anyway. But it's no harm having a sounding board. I don't think Alex Ferguson is. actively controlling Ole Gunnar
Would it be
Solskjaer.
sacrilege to
Yes, it would.
to question
Yes, it
whether
would.
Alex Ferguson would be a great man to talk to in 2019 in terms of the way the
Ages
game
ago.
is? No, but the way the game has changed, like how tactical based it is.
Yeah.
Like for most of his tenure, his tactics were pretty basic. And his formations were pretty basic.
And for the last half of his tenure, he deferred to a number 2, whoever it was, whether it was Carlos
Like it
Queiroz
was
or
generally
Freeman.
4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1. There was. It was quite traditional. I'm not sure. Like when you look at the.
Distancing myself from this. by the
Yeah,
way.
I don't know. Move on.
I'm distancing myself strongly from this. So
It's all
let's.
speculation. What
yeah.
the hell do we know?
Well, exactly.
Better
you don't-
nostalgia.
You don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
You
It's
don't
a
know to what
disease.
you don't know to what extent Solskjaer is leaning on him.
They can't get over Alan Larkin, though. I never knew that.
There you
There
go.
go.
Every day's a
Someone's
skill day.
asking for him.
I will do. Yeah.
Right. Let's
Ask him how much money I would get selling insurance once I lose my job.
Let's start the news round. Billy McNeill.
The sad news coming from Glasgow this afternoon, and tributes, of course, have been pouring in from across the breadth of the footballing world since that news broke that Billy McNeill died at the age of 79. The man they call Caesar captained Celtic to the 1967 European Cup triumph when the Lisbon Lions came from behind to beat the great Inter Milan 2-1. As a player, McNeill captained Celtic to 9 successive Scottish League titles, adding 4 more during his 2 spells as a manager. John Clark partnered McNeill in the heart of the Celtic defence on that famous afternoon in Lisbon and has been among the many paying tribute today.
They'd be a right good team, didn't they? Good players and a lot of good personalities in that team. And he was a figurehead, and what is thing? He had a great presence about himself, and he was determined to be the best all the time, And when he went into management, I worked along with him here and at Aberdeen. He was a winner, and that's what he wanted to be. And he was also a winner on the park. It proved it with the amount of medals he accumulated,
We'll ask Pat Nevin about Billy McNeill later on. He knew him reasonably well. You were saying you interviewed him about 10, 12
Yeah,
years ago?
2008 I met him in the Westbury. There was a Celtic musical on, I think it might have been on the Olympia Theatre, but Billy was over doing promotional duties as part of it. I think we might have been sponsoring it, so an interview had been arranged. And he was a really nice man, a very interesting man, and he was also a very big man. Like he was about 6'2" for...
generation.
Yeah, like even now when you go to Glasgow, they're some of the smallest men in Europe, I would say. But his maternal grandparents were Lithuanian, so maybe that were the genes that came into play there. But he was interesting. He ran for election on I think it was called Senior Citizens. I don't know what Senior Citizens something United Front they were called or something, but it was about the rights of older people. And this I think he was 68, 69 at the time. So he was roughly the same age as Trapattoni. And this is when Trapattoni was coming in. And he was just thinking, he was on about how great this was, like for somebody that age to get a job like that. And he played against Trapattoni a few times. We talked as well about, he came very close to getting the Ireland job when Jack Charlton got it. Because he was actually a really good manager. He won 4 leagues with Celtic in 2 stints, and he got Manchester City promoted. And he put, like Alex Ferguson gave him the credit that he put the building blocks in place for Ferguson to Aberdeen before he took over, and then a great success with them. But at City, he was the FAI's first choice after Owen Hand went, and he told me he was very interested, but there was a problem. City weren't willing to release him, or there was some complication around, and he had to pull out later on, and it came down then to, Liam Toohey was left in, Bob Paisley was parachuted in the last minute, John Giles and Jack Charlton. But it would have been an interesting appointment. And also, he's probably the most significant captain in the history of the European Cup. Like to captain a team where all the players were from 30 miles, within a radius 30 miles of Celtic Park. Like something like that is unthinkable now. Like people now talk about this year's Champions League having romantic semi-finalists in Tottenham, who won the 10 wealthiest clubs in the world, Ajax, who've won the European Cup 4 times. Like so that puts in context what Celtic did back then, and no British club had ever won it back then. And younger people won't realise the significance of that season for Celtic. They won 5 trophies. Do you know how many goals they scored that season? 196. And they beat the Inter Milan of Helenio Herrera, the founder of Catenaccio, who were just so defensive, ultra defensive, and they ripped them apart. Like they played incredibly brilliant attacking football, and Billy McNeill was their leader. Really interesting character.
Yeah. So we'll pay tribute to him on the football show with Pat and Evan later on. Meanwhile, the Crucible today.
Yeah, James Cahill pulled off one of the shocks of World Championship history. The amateur player beat 5-time Crucible champion and world number 1 Ronnie O'Sullivan by 10 frames to 8 in their first round tie. Cahill will now go on to play Stephen Maguire in round 2, but O'Sullivan says he physically didn't feel anything close to his best today.
No, it's been a while now, you know, maybe since after Llandudno, you know. I was not feeling too great there, and then, you know, I kind of got myself feeling a little bit better, and then last couple of weeks there's been a few days where I just felt a bit ropey, you know, and then felt okay, and then so I wasn't surprised it come, but, you know, it's just a little disappointing, you know, that you're not physically at your best, you know.
Has it been diagnosed as a bug or something?
Nah, I think it's just everybody gets it, don't they? You know what I mean? It's just, you know, if you could take a magic pill to kind of protect yourself from this stuff, we probably all would. But, you know, it's just life. It's general. It's not the end of the world. It's the way it goes. I tried to give it my best. I tried my hardest, and it wasn't good enough.
It seems it was a very strange performance by Ronnie O'Sullivan. We'll talk to Ken Doherty in about 15 minutes' time or so. Stephen Hendry was almost saying that it was like exhibition snooker in terms of his shot choices. He was taking on crazy shots, really, and it was very ragged. And then Alan McManus was saying on the BBC that he was playing too quickly as well. He was like 15 seconds over a shot, almost careless, and just firing reds everywhere, and there was almost a sense, how much does he want to be there?
Yeah.
That kind of performance.
But that's what, like, if you told me today that an amateur beat a top player at the World Championship and asked me to guess who they beat, I would pick Ronnie O'Sullivan, because there have always been days like that and he's just not on it, and you get that impression it doesn't really matter that much to him. Like, he's done a lot of interviews, a really interesting guy, but you know, he's talked about his battles with clinical depression. He's a huge interest in Buddhism. He's talked about how he's as much interest in running these days as snooker.
Yeah.
He's threatened to retire a number of times, and he took an extended break from it. I remember talking to Ken about this a few years ago, about age and snooker, because it's not a physical sport, so you'd wonder why it's so hard for older players. Like Mark Williams is the only player, I think, since 75 over 40 to win the World Championship, and Ronnie now is 43.
Yeah.
And one of the things Ken was saying, like concentration can be affected as you get older, but also just the appetite for the endless practice, like for Ronnie to get as good as he got. Yeah.
The only thing is, though,
like Ronnie very quickly, but Ronnie has 3 kids, and like he's been doing that endless hours of practice for over 30 years, 35 years.
The reason this is such a shock is that O'Sullivan is thoroughly engaged with the sport at the moment. So he's back world number 1 for the first time in 9 years.
Yeah.
In his last 9 events, he's won 5 of them. He's been in 7 finals.
Yeah.
He's playing well. He's into his snooker. He's clearly practicing. And this is the chance to catch Stephen Hendry's record. It's the only record in snooker that he doesn't have, the number of world titles. He hasn't won a world title in 6 years.
Yeah.
So the notion that he would rock up and be almost uninterested.
But I don't think it's deliberate. I think it's
after winning 5 of your previous 9, after getting back to top of the world rankings, is a bit surprising. And it was over 2 days. You know,
but I don't think it's a deliberate choice.
I'm not saying it's a choice.
Joe. I think that's his personality. Like when you have a depressive personality like that as well, I think even the pressure of going to Crucible, even when he hasn't won this, you don't know how he reacts to that. You know, sometimes it gets the best out of him. Some days I think it takes him down a pretty bleak road, or he just seems. You know, as was mentioned there, he tries crazy stuff. He looks like he just wants to get out of there.
Yeah. And
I don't think that's deliberate, but I think it's a quirk in his personality.
Listen to him in his post-match interview there, with the way he's describing how he was physically feeling. The fact that he said he felt leaden foot, he felt like literally all his arms and legs weighed a ton. Like that's commensurate with somebody who's gone through a pretty rough time mentally.
I accept that, fellas, but he has said I felt like this for a number of weeks.
Yeah, and you can
not
do.
Months. And in that period, he has stormed back to the top of the world rankings and he's won 5 of 9 events. So it is still a little bit surprising. I'm not saying
it's a little bit surprising, but the what he's been winning has been under the radar. Like one of the only tournaments that gets massive coverage these days is the World Championships. So I think it does bring even for somebody like him who's won so much and achieved so much. I think it does bring a little bit of pressure. And we don't know how that reacts. Sometimes his personality, I think, reacts in different ways to that pressure. We don't
Yeah,
I don't like psychoanalyzing.
No, I
something we
wouldn't
don't
from a distance.
know,
I wouldn't from
no.
a distance. What we can say is it's definitely at a kilter with his recent form. I don't think we can be inside his
without
head
a doubt,
for obvious
like
reasons.
Ken knows him well because I talked to Ken. Ken practiced with Ronnie from his early teens. Like Ken would be a couple of years older, but like from it was like 13, 14, Ken would have been playing with Ronnie, so he knows him really well.
Ronnie's dad paid him to practice with Ronnie.
Yeah.
Would pay for his taxi, and Ken's 6 years older than him, so from when Ronnie was 12 or so on, Ken was going and practicing against him. So knows him really well. It's impossible to be inside Ronnie O'Sullivan's head for obvious reasons, but it's definitely a shock. Some are saying the biggest
He's written
shock in
3
the history
crime
of the
novels.
sport.
He's a lot going on in his life.
Some are saying the biggest shock in the history of the sport, even.
Yeah.
So, Mark Allen.
Yeah, he's just gotten his campaign underway. He's the only Irishman in the draw, we have to remember here as well. He's taking on China's Zhu Yuling. They're playing the first frame of their match. On the other table, Graham Dott has begun his quest to claw back ground on the 2015 champion Stuart Bingham. A break of in excess of 100 has seen him claim the first frame of this evening's session, and now Bingham leads by 8 frames to 2. Earlier on today, we saw victory for David Gilbert, beating Joe Perry by 10 frames to 8, while Tenchaya Unnu took a 6-3 lead over the former finalist Judd Trump. As you mentioned there, Joe, Shamrock Rovers looking to extend their lead at the top of the SSE Airtricity Perrin Division tonight to 10 points. However, they welcome a Bohemian side to Tala, against whom they haven't won in almost 2 years. Kickoff is at 8 o'clock. Tottenham, meanwhile, can solidify their hopes of a top 4 place in the Premier League tonight. They welcome a relegation-threatened Brighton to the new White Hart Lane. Tottenham start with Hugo Lloris back in goal, a back 4 of Kieran Trippier, Toby Alderweireld, Jan Vertonghen and Danny Rose. In midfield, it's Victor Wanyama and Christian Eriksen, with Dele Alli, Heung-min Son and Lucas Moura in support of Fernando Llorente. For Brighton, 6 changes for them. Matt Ryan in goal, Montoya, Shane Duffy, Lewis Dunk, Bernardo across the back 4, Dale Stevens, Basuma and Pascal Gross up in the midfield, and Yangabash, Andon and Lucadia are their front 3. Elsewhere, Southampton will look to ease their relegation worries when they go to Watford. Watford line out with Ben Foster in goal, back 4 of Darryl Janmaat, Craig Cathcart, Christian Kabasele and Adam Messina. In midfield, it's Will Hughes, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Etienne Capoue and Roberto Pereira, while Gerard De La Feu is in support of Andre Gray. For Southampton, Shane Long starts up front for them, Angus Guns in goal, a back 3 of Jack Stevens, Jan Bednarek and Maya Yoshida, with James Ward-Prowse and Ryan Bertrand providing the width. In midfield, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Oriel Romeo and Stuart Armstrong, with Nathan Redmond in support of Long. Both of those games kick off at 7:45.
I think a few people are getting the wrong end of the stick on the Ronnie chat. Everybody can have a bad day at the office, even Ronnie O'Sullivan. Will you get off your high horse and ditch the mock indignation, Keith in Dublin 2?
What was the indignation?
Who's that aimed at?
But who was indignant?
Generally.
Like, I don't really get that.
I don't think it was indignation.
We were making the point that it was a massive surprise, Keith. I would have thought that was the point. Like, we're talking about his recent form, and that's why it's such a surprise. He's against an amateur. There was no high horse. Obviously, someone can lose a snooker match. Lads, you're not really giving the greatest snooker player of all time any credit. He can't plan feeling like crap. It's just the way it is. Bit of sympathy, maybe. I think Kieran was making that point. Like, all of us are making the point that he's been in brilliant form and this is a massive shock. That's the general sense. There's no one having a go at Ronnie O'Sullivan here. To be fair, how Arsenal have handled Wenger's departure has been excellent in comparison to Man United. Says
We don't know. It's a bit early to say, isn't it?
I guess at least, well, Arsene Wenger's disappeared, which is probably helpful.
Yeah.
Unai Emery's made a better fish of his first season than David Moyes did.
Yeah, that's true. Roy Keane slated the players following one of Mourinho's last United matches, insisted they weren't good enough no matter who they took on as manager, how Riley was, Connor and Swords. It's definitely an issue. I mean, there are lots of good players there. Even the team that played against Everton on paper looked really good.
Yeah.
Lots of talent there.
That front 3 that they had against Everton, like I think it was Rashford, Lukaku and Martial.
Yeah.
Like, that should frighten the bejesus out of defences.
With Pogba in behind them.
Because I've seen some stuff and people are listing off like 11, 12, 13 players that need to be sold, and I think that's mad. Like, you probably need to ship out 4 or 5, but you can't bring in 12 players in the summer. You know,
And expect things to be okay afterwards.
Yeah, 5 or 6. Like, maybe bring in 5 or 6 is a lot even to bring in. And there's a lot of players there you just think, with the right coaching and a right pre-season, there's more in them. Like, how many internationals are that club? You know, like there wasn't massive money spent on those players because they'd no reputation, and like other clubs had scouted them as well and were keen on them. So they're not nobodies. Like, they're not Fulham.
Well, you only have to look to how they played when he first took over.
Yeah.
They were good performances against good teams.
Like, look
Spurs
at the
away.
performance against Liverpool at Old Trafford, where they were down to scratch lineup, and Liverpool couldn't get past them.
Yeah.
So
Spurs away.
yeah.
They rode their luck for sure.
Yeah.
But it was a good performance.
Tomorrow will be interesting because there's all this stuff. They won't be motivated because they don't want Liverpool to win the league, or like maybe that's a lot of fans feel that way. But I think this is one Ollie will be saying to players. For this club will be a laughingstock if we're seen to roll over because of some supposed rivalry with Liverpool at Old Trafford against their local rivals. I think you'll see a response from United.
Well,
they probably aren't good enough to get results, but I think you will see a response.
See a response, even if nothing else, for the most cynical of reasons, and it's their Champions League bonuses.
Of course.
Like their wages will take a major hit. And I'll tell you another reason it'll be interesting, because Roy Keane's in the Sky Sports studios.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of that game tomorrow night, Manchester City midfielder Kevin De Bruyne is going to miss it. His manager Pep Guardiola says the Belgian picked up a muscular injury in Saturday's win over Tottenham. De Bruyne has missed almost as many Premier League games this season as he's played due to knee ligament problems and a thigh issue. Well, Raheem Sterling wants clubs to be deduced 9 points if any of their fans are found to be guilty of racist abuse. The Manchester City forward would also like to see 3 match stadium bans. Sterling feels that anti-racism slogans on t-shirts and a recent social media campaign aren't enough to tackle the problem.
What does that actually do? What is the outcome of that? Is it a campaign for 3 days and 3 days we've done something and it blows over? Or are we going to do something to say this is what we're doing and from now on this is how it's going to go if anyone steps out of that line? And I think that's what every player that's been in this situation will like. I don't think these social media posts, these t-shirts are doing anything. It's not doing anything. It's not going to change anything. It needs to be at first within football, because that's where I am. I can't say in everyday walks of life, to help people in our environment and people that's been suffering these things to have something that they know when they go in the football field that no one will dare to even chant one word at them, and that's what I'm aiming for. That's what my team are aiming for.
Where was that interview? Or
that was with Sky. It was with Jeff Shreves ahead of tomorrow night's game.
Okay. Is the full one up yet, or?
Online, I'm not sure, but it's definitely knocking around.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was interesting.
It was, yeah. He goes on to kind of want to back off and say, listen, I'm not, I don't want to get too deeply into this. And Shreves tries to encourage him more, saying, no, listen, you do have a platform to actually make your point heard. From where you are at the moment. A lot of interesting stuff from Raheem Sterling this season. Chelsea, meanwhile, have confirmed that Callum Hudson-Odoi is due to have an operation on a ruptured Achilles tendon this evening. The teenage winger limped off during the first half of last night's 2-2 draw with Burnley in the Premier League. Meanwhile, Sean Cronin's a doubt for Leinster's Heineken Champions Cup final meeting with Saracens next month. The hooker sustained a calf injury during Sunday's semi-final win over Toulouse and was sent for a scan, with scrum coach John Fogarty admitting Cronin is a concern. Cronin will definitely miss Saturday's Pro 14 meeting with Ulster, while Adam Byrne's out for the rest of the season. The winger picked up a quad injury during their recent loss to Glasgow. Rhys Ruddock's following the return to play protocols after feeling unwell after the captain's run ahead of Sunday's game at the Aviva. Prop Andrew Porter and scrum half Jameson Gibson-Parker doubts for this weekend with pectoral and hamstring issues respectively. While switching to Munster, Joey Carbery and Keith Earls are both expected to sit out their Pro 14 derby against Connacht on Saturday. Earls is recovering from a thigh injury which forced him to miss their meeting in the semi-finals with Saracens, while Carbery's been out with a hamstring issue, and head coach Johan van Graan says he won't risk either player unless they're fully fit. Prop Dave Kilcoyne also doubt for the Reds after picking up an ankle injury in that loss to Saracens at the weekend.
Matt Williams and Rory O'Connor on the way after 8 o'clock. Put the Ferguson issue to Richie this way, says Andy in Limerick.
Oh, here we go.
Vince McMahon.
Here we go.
You're already listening.
My ears have been pricked.
Vince McMahon leaves WWE.
Yes.
Triple H takes over.
Yeah.
Vince shows up every week for Raw and meets the guys, watches over Triple H's shoulder.
Yeah.
Would he prefer Vince to stay or go?
Well, that's literally not going to happen because Vince has said he will die in the job. So he's not going to leave that company until he's carted out in a box. Which is, I'd absolutely believe.
Are you not going to work with the premise of the question here?
No. Because
Okay.
the premise of the question is flawed.
What are you talking about?
I don't actually know. I was just
Apparently only 12-year-olds watch Kieran.
Okay. I don't even know what this is. What is it?
WWE.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yeah, there you
okay.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came to me now.
Would you not know Vince McMahon? No.
Yeah, he
you
pretends to
would.
not
You
know.
would.
He pretends to not know. Typical. Bloody typical.
Sean and Kerry makes the point. Most off the ball road shows are basically nostalgia. People in glass houses love the nostalgia. What else are you going to talk to them about? You can't talk to them about the future.
Well, as we've established on tonight's show, we can't predict the future. Not yet.
What are you up to now? Grand. And then
Tell us
thing
about that.
happened? Yeah, tell us a bit more about it. Obviously, look, we all love a bit of nostalgia.
Come on, can we not turn our roadshows into like 2 hours of tactical analysis with some kind of tactics truck?
Nostalgia, though, is a certain kind of looking into the past, isn't it?
It's a curation of the past. Because you sweep away all of the bad stuff and all of the middle stuff.
It's a sentimentalization of the past, I think. Yeah. A sugarcoating of the past, basically. Like you're not looking... it's like that the Virgin Media show, Don't Look Back in Anger, isn't that what it's called? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's looking back fondly rather than in anger.
Yeah, but they look at the bad stuff as well in that.
Oh, they do, yeah.
Yeah. They do, but that's what they call the show, though, isn't it?
Don't Look Back in Anger.
Well, that's just until they get the 2008 episode. See them go, the Troika are coming in. Ah, they are. Shit.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Lads, you can't compare Emery doing well to Moyes or Ole Ferguson winning title consistently every couple of years, whereas Wenger hadn't challenged the league in 10 years. When he left Arsenal, they were on a slippy slope. Fergie left United as champions, which is a good point. They are unusual circumstances.
Yeah, and the team he won with at the end, it's remarkable that he won a title. That is a testament to him.
Yeah.
When you look back at the midfield, like Anderson, I think is 4 Premier League medals. It was a really ordinary midfielder, you know.
Yeah.
Who's now, he won about 3 caps for Brazil. He's 4 Premier League.
One of Ferguson's great gifts was and it's actually almost a complete opposite to the current situation, whereby he would name a team, you would look at the team and say, oof, I'm not sure about this, and they would win. Whereas the current team, that's a great looking team on paper.
Yeah.
And
See, he built the aura, you know, and the aura spooked people. Like that's why Guardiola talked about today. He said teams aren't afraid to go to Old Trafford anymore, and they were afraid before. But very, very quickly in Moyes' first season, and then when Van Gaal came in, a load of teams who'd never won in 20, 30, 40 years at Old Trafford started to win. Yeah. A load of them hadn't won years, started winning. So there's no fear factor there anymore.
Last story or two?
Meath begin the defence of the Electric Ireland Leinster Minor Football Championship this evening when they take on Dublin at Parnell Park. The other Group 2 game sees Wexford face Offaly in Group 1. Carlow facing Laois and Longford up against Westmeath. Last year's beaten finalists Kildare beginning their Group 3 campaign with the visit of Wicklow to Newbridge, while Kilkenny are taking on Louth tonight. And Stephanie Frappart will make a piece of French footballing history on Sunday. The 35-year-old will become the first woman to take charge of a French top-flight game when she referees Strasbourg's meeting with Amiens. Frappart is not the first woman, though, to take charge of a major league game in Europe, with that honour going to Bibiana Steinhaus, who oversaw Hertha Berlin's Bundesliga meeting with Werder Bremen back in 2017. And former Liverpool and England striker Robbie Fowler has been appointed head coach of Australian side Brisbane Roar. He'll start his new role at the beginning of next season, having signed a 2-year deal. He had a stint playing down under in the A-League for North Queensland and also for Perth, did Robbie.
There we go. Kieran Cunningham, thanks a million for coming in.
No problem.
Appreciate it. We're going to take a short break. Ken Doherty next on Ronnie O'Sullivan. We'll have rugby after 8 o'clock, and in just a moment we'll give you the chance to win an all expenses paid trip to Ireland, Scotland at the Rugby World Cup 2019.
Off the ball on Newstalk.
Minister, your take on what happened over the weekend with those marches, is it something the government should be legislating for, in your view?